Hi everybody, how you guys doing tonight? This is Miriam. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you like my YouTube channel, like and subscribe, share my channel around. If you like more content, check out my two Facebook groups, Bryant Dragon Arnold Fan Club. If you are a fan of the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, the TV show. Also, if you like paranormal stuff or cryptid, if you have an experience of your own, if you like interested in checking out my experiences, check out my Bigfoot Diaries right on Facebook. Let's jump into it tonight. We are going to read Skinwalker by James A. McQuiston. Okay, first, hope everybody's doing well. Nobody's on. Wait till some people jump on. Let's see if you're on. Yep, I'm on now. Okay, I'm going to start reading. If anybody can't hear me very well, please let me know in the chat, and I'll speak up. Give me grace, I don't have a good voice. Okay. I'll start at the beginning. Preface. When I was 10 or 12 years old, sometime around then, I lived near a large pond located in a 60-acre city park, my playground for many years. One day in the middle of winter, I was walking my dog, my best friend at the time, through the snow to see what new or interesting things we could find in the quiet urban forest. As we approached the pond, there were several ducks enjoying themselves near an opening in the ice kept thin by the actions of an incoming stream. My little dog was a hunter at heart, and so she ran out onto the ice to chase the ducks. Abruptly fell through into a little ring of water. Each time she would try to climb back on the ice, it would break off. I could see the panic in her eyes as she looked to me for help. With little thought, I jumped into the ice, immediately breaking it like a naval icebreaker might until I reached my pet. By the time I could grab onto her, the water was over my head, and so I struggled to hold her and save myself until I could get footing on the lake bottom again. A park employee saw what was going on, and apparently was too concerned about getting his boots wet that he did nothing more than hold out a short stick towards me, which was by this time useless. The next day, the newspaper wrote a headline and story indicating that it took the efforts of two park officials to save the boy who fell through the ice. The boy didn't fall through the ice, and he saved himself, learning a valuable lesson along the way. Don't believe everything you read, especially if it has been sensationalized to sell newspapers, or in more modern days to sell documentaries, TV shows, and movies. With my newfound healthy skepticism, I began reading books like Mysteries of the Unexplained, Strange Stories, and Amazing Facts. The People of Almanac series and other similar publications. I filled my head with stories of inexplicable happenings, always trying to confirm these tales with supporting evidence from similar accounts, logical explanations, and modern-day science, if possible, building up considerable talent for this. I've now written a baker's dozen of series books, plus many articles, and in case I've approached the subject the same way, attempting to be as truthful, pragmatic, logical, and scientifically as possible. I speak for no one else with this book, if it is not meant to tear apart anyone else's theories or presentations, only to explore a fascinating subject from perhaps a marauder's bird's eye, view of it based on my historical and metaphysical training and experience. I'm not the final word, only a voice on this subject, sharing what I think some of the elements of this mystery could truly be about. Though I may not always sound this way, I do submit my theories, humbly, hoping that they help solve the enigma of Skinwalker Ranch. Chapter 1: Science versus Imagination. In the period of time between Charles Darwin's Origins of Species and a decade after the founding of the Society for Physical Research, an organization which this author is a proud member, there entered an era during which famous publisher E. L. Godkin once noted, "Science killed the imagination." This science of which Godkin spoke appeared to have smothered, at least for a short while, literature, art, religion, and the consciousness of the immensity that surrounds our experience as humans, approaching it as an area only meant for mechanical discovery. It seems this fascination with a scientific explanation to all perceived events often overrode an appreciation for the things which weren't so readily explainable and perhaps never will be. Famous scientists like Tesla, Einstein, Edison, and Curie might possibly argue that it was, in part, their imagination that led to their scientific discoveries. In fact, they did. Nikola Tesla believed that the entire Earth was a source of electrical energy that could be harnessed. He also believed in other worlds beyond Earth, and that he himself was being contacted by them. In the face of all scientific advancements that Tesla brought to our lives, it is hard to ignore his alternative beliefs. One Tesla quote is telling, "I have observed electrical actions, which have appeared inexplicable, faint, and uncertain though they have given me a deep conviction and foreknowledge that ere long all human beings on this globe as one will turn their eyes to the firmament above with feelings of love and reverence, thrilled by the glad news, brethren. We have a message from another world, unknown and remote." It reads 1, 2, 3. The preeminent physicist Albert Einstein stated that imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. Professor Einstein reportedly came upon his world changing the theory of relativity while daydreaming on a hillside of grass, mindlessly watching clouds go by, though he spent many hours at the chalkboard as well. Then there's the prolific inventor, Thomas Edison, who reminds us, it's obvious that we don't know 1/millionth of 1% about anything. He also famously stated, to invent, you need a good imagination and a pile of junk. Finally, Madame Marie Curie, who painstakingly discovered polonium and radium, who championed the use of radiation in medicine, who fundamentally changed our understanding of radioactivity, tells us, a scientist in his or her laboratory is not a mere technician. He or she is also a child confronting natural phenomena that impress him/her as though they were fairy tales. And so a study of Skinwalker Ranch, it seems, would be most fair in the minds of these famous scientists if it, in fact, consisted of a healthy dose of both scientific observation and free-flowing imagination in the hope that some satisfying value or truth would emerge. It is my intention to approach the study of Skinwalker Ranch with an equal portion of imagination and science, so that nothing, or at least not too much, slips through the cracks due to the closed-mindedness. I start with a story that has nothing specifically to do with Skinwalker Ranch beyond the fact that it involves UFOs, and is most authenticated story of a person being abducted by alien spacecraft. I speak of Travis Walton. I'll show you a photo. So this is a picture of Travis Walton with the author James McQuiston. Walton, as of November 5th, 1975, became perhaps the most studied subject in this area. I choose this case because it is the only one I have any first-hand knowledge of, having recently met Mr. Walton and listened to his detailed account of the episode. My version of the incident will be far less detailed than Walton's might be, as I will skip to what I think are the pertinent parts of the story. The basics are that Travis and 6 other lumberjacks were working in a remote and rugged area of the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest near Snowflake, Arizona. As they left work late one evening, they noticed a strange light in the forest alongside the road. Travis admits that what happened next was half curiosity and half bravado. As the work truck stopped in line with the strange light, Travis jumped out and began walking towards the object to identify it. Even though his fear grew as he approached closer, his pride kept him from returning to the truck, revealing his fear to his logging companions. At one point, he paused, perhaps to get a better, steadier view. It finally struck him that he should return to the truck before it was too late. However, it was already too late. As he began to leave, something else struck him. It was some type of bluish beam hitting him in the chest and bouncing him off the ground and into the air. Now, if we only had Travis' word on this, it would be hard not to accept that it could be a hoax. However, all 6 men who were with him that fateful night saw the light, saw the beam hit Travis, saw him rise into the air. Fear overcame the crew, and their leader and truck driver made a quick getaway, only to have second thoughts. The men returned to the scene to look for Walton, but they could not find him. As hard as they searched, he was nowhere to be seen. The crew then sped to the police station to report the strange event. Immediately, they were thought to be part of a hoax, or worse, as murderers of Travis Walton. And who could prove differently? Well, a lie detector expert, that's who. I'm not going to get into the names of those involved, as there is a documentary, Travis, the true story of Travis Walton, where people can get the full story. The bottom line is that 5 of the 6 men that very night passed the lie detector test. The 6th was hesitant at first, but he did eventually take and pass the test as well. The operator of the test said that for these men to concoct a story, tell in similar fashion through the separate police interrogations, and to all pass a lie detector test would present odds in the millions to 1 range. One crew member stated, "I know what I saw, and it wasn't anything from this earth." Another said the UFO was smooth and was giving off a yellowish-orange light. A third stated, "I saw a bluish light come from the machine, and Travis went flying like he'd touched a live wire." A fourth said, "That ray was the brightest thing I've ever seen in my whole life." The leader and driver of the truck stated, "I've been working these woods for over 10 years, and that's the damnedest thing that ever happened to me." After 5 days had passed, Travis was found 20 to 30 miles through the dense forest. He was shaken and had no idea that it wasn't the same day as the event. He was shielded from taking the test simply because his mind was in such a fragile state. Eventually, he took many lie detector tests, submitted to hypnosis to better remember his ordeal. During that ordeal, he saw 2 types of creatures aboard an apparently alien craft. 3 creatures were similar to those often mentioned by abductees, but 2 were very human-like. Walton postulated that, because he was in such a frenzy, the more human-like creatures may have been some type of projection to his imagination to calm him down. He also feels that the creatures were there to help him after he accidentally came too close to their craft. Many believers and non-believers have studied this episode, but no one has been able to absolutely prove that it did or did not happen. We only have the science of law enforcement and the medical community blended with the terrifying recollections of 7 no-nonsense lumberjacks to rely on. Even Travis states that he is not 100% sure of it all. And yet, what else explains what he experienced? What his fellow workers saw, and what interrogation science says they truly believed. I asked him specifically what it felt like when the bolt or ray hit him, and he said it was like the feeling you might get when you're playing football and someone hits you from the side unexpectedly. It rattled his whole frame. It also rattled his whole life, and yet he sticks by his story, as do his friends, as does science. There have been additional scientific methods thrown at this case, including the realization that the growth rings of trees surrounding the landing zone have grown directionally larger toward the center of the area of activity. Science, if anything, has supported what some might claim was simply imagination. Experiences similar to that of Walton's have been reported by thousands of people around the world. Even Travis admits that some stories seem too far-fetched to believe, and yet how hard is it for anyone to accept his story as true unless they face something similar? And so we walk away from his tale not knowing exactly what happened, not knowing what to believe, but assuring ourselves that something definitely did. In 2016, Brandon Fugel, currently owner of Skinwalker Ranch, told Newsweek magazine that Skinwalker Ranch is the most scientifically studied paranormal hotspot on the planet, with the highest frequency of documented UFO sightings, bizarre cattle mutilations, electromagnetic anomalies, and unexplained phenomena. It occurs to me that the first half of Fugel's statement could help explain the second half. In other words, if Skinwalker is the most studied place on Earth for strange phenomena, that could at least partially explain why so many strange phenomena have been reported there. Perhaps an equal number of strange events happen all over the world at various times, but no one has had the intention and financial wherewithal to steadily study and catalog them. This is not to say that Skinwalker Ranch is not special. In fact, quite the opposite. Skinwalker is special and very important because they are taking such a deep dive into these phenomena. I learned long ago that just keeping records of events helps the more common occurrences to be detected. When I would run a piece of equipment or carry out a certain process, I would write a quick list of all the problems I encountered along the way. Invariably, there were only a few issues causing the overall confusion associated with the project, and eliminating or watching out for these would make life dramatically easier. Since discovering this technique, I have used it in many different jobs and have also incorporated it into my management style. It has saved a lot of people a lot of trouble and got them on their way much quicker. This appears to be what is happening on Skinwalker Ranch. A team of dedicated people are recording a series of possibly common yet unexplainable events that go unnoticed in the confusion of our everyday lives. Perhaps what makes Skinwalker Ranch so special is that men like Fugel and earlier Robert Bigelow have been willing to front the cost of a study of this 512-acre property tucked away in the northeast corner of Utah. Something that is not happening in any other known part of the world to this intensity. It may take commitment and financing equal to the that of the current Skinwalker team, to finally realize Tesla's prediction that all humans beings on this globe as one will turn their eyes to the firmament above, with feelings of love and reverence, thrilled by the glad news. Brethren, we have a message from another world. But as we know, the weird happenings on Skinwalker Ranch go far beyond the sightings of flying saucers. With this book, you might say I am appointing myself as an unofficial member of the Skinwalker Ranch team in the role of a researcher of phenomena from across the globe that mirrors and may help explain what has been observed and often measured on the ranch. While I don't expect a membership card anytime soon, my research will still, I hope, have a stabilizing effect on the quest. The reader may now be wondering why I think that I have anything to offer in this regard. I have been a storyteller for most of my life. As a young boy, I began reading books by the likes of Robert Louis Stevenson, Jack London, and Alexander Dumas. Once I learned that my own family had an extensive and fairly clear history from as far back as the 15th century in Scotland, then Ireland, and then North America, I began researching the details and produced a 286-page book in 2002. 2007, I also published a book on Captain Jack, Yukon Jack, I think that's how you pronounce it, the only man to ever be called Father of Alaska or Father of the Yukon. He was a family member with whom I was found to share an exact DNA match through the testing of his grandson. In the case of the Captain Jack book, I was helped by nearly every living Yukon River historian. I was treated to a visit to the Dawson City, Yukon, and driven across the border into Alaska. I even hitched a ride with First Nations fishermen down the Yukon River to a place where his ancestors and mine once traded furs. What I learned from writing these first two books is that a wealth of information is out there, waiting to be assembled into a more complete story through the use of modern-day techniques, from the scanning of very old documents posted online to the once impossible comparison of vast numbers of records, to gain a clearer picture, and finally to applying science where possible. These methods have worked wonderfully for me, and by 2016, I made my first approach to the team now searching Oak Island, Nova Scotia, for an old treasure. My efforts resulted in 9 books on this subject. Let me show you a photo here. So this is a photo of the author with Rick Legina from The Curse of Oak Island, as some of you may see. Some of you may see the TV show. Okay. My efforts resulted in 9 books. With each book, I built on the history behind Oak Island and have presented dozens and dozens of never-before-considered possibilities. My unique theory was recently ranked as second out of top 10. I have been filmed for over 20 hours on Oak Island, and I appeared in segments on 13 episodes of the History Channel's related programming. Prometheus Entertainment, the producers of Skinwalker Ranch and The Curse of Oak Island, stated in a letter of reference, as one of the key researchers with Oak Island Tours Incorporated, James A. McQuiston on-screen appearances are critical to the production and unique theories that only he can provide. In addition, at the end of the 2020-2021 season, Rick Legina, one of the driving forces of the Oak Island project, made the on-air statement, "When you ask the who, what, when, where, why, and how, I think James, above all, really deals with that. I can tell you what, James is not giving up." Yet even before my recognition by the Oak Island and Prometheus teams, I was granted a fellowship with the Society of Antiquaries of Scotland, for the vast amount of research I had carried out on many events related to Scottish history. In my research efforts, I have been aided by the British Museum, the National Museum of Scotland, the National Archives of the UK, Scotland's National Records, the Nova Scotia Archives, and a wide range of other historic organizations and individual historians. The list of those who have helped me in my research is impressive, although not needed here to prove my credentials as a historian any further. But there is much more to be added. I've also studied mediumship and meditation for a period of 12 years, with great teachers from all over the Western world. And I've expanded my studies to include Qigong hypnosis and remote viewing. I've taken advantage of my heightened sense of awareness for the last 22 years. My main teachers had once worked for the famous self-help guru, Tony Robbins. They met while employed by him and were married. Elaine, my mediumship teacher, learned the craft from a woman who had studied directly under the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and his wife. Her husband, Mark, my meditation teacher, studied directly under Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who was the founder of Transcendental Meditation and also the guru to the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and many other very famous people. While my teachers were more than effective in their own right, they also brought in instructors from all over the world to expand the consciousness of our class and to teach us methods beyond the comprehension of most everyday people. Eventually, I became a member of the Society for Psychical Research, Physical Research, as well as several other historical and or metaphysical organizations. I have many tales of how I was led to the exact book or bit of important information. I needed to continue my storytelling. I'm famous in my family for these incredible finds at just the right time. They added to the Oak Island story in dozens of ways never before written about. In 2021, I had an inkling to look into the story behind Skinwalker Ranch, and I discovered that the typical rendition of the story of its first owner was in serious error. I sent an email to the current ranch owner, Brendan Fugel, which he very much appreciated and passed on to his team at the ranch. In this book, I will retell what I've found concerning Skinwalker's story. Mr. Fugel's response to my email reads, "This is much appreciated and sheds light on a topic in a historical record that is often confusing and inconsistent. I have been trying to verify the origin of the Skinwalker curse that involves the area and property in what many have referred to as Skinwalker Ridge that runs along the edge of the Mesa Plateau. As a recognized historian and certified metaphysician, my background seems more than adequate to at least chime in on the story of Skinwalker Ranch. People will believe what they want to believe, and my only hope is that I can shed some light on the subject. My research certainly can't hurt in the overall effort to understand this enigma by presenting a holistic look at the phenomena that take place on Skinwalker Ranch. On the following page are two of the many certificates I have received in my 4 years of formal training and 8 additional years of continuing education within the world of the metaphysical and paranormal. At top of my graduation certificate as a psychic medium and metaphysician with a multitude of phenomena being investigated. Below that is my certificate for study under Dick Stoughton, America's best-known hypnotist. Okay, Chapter 2. The very first owner of part of the land now known as Skinwalker Ranch was a man recorded by the name of Monk Chavano. Chavano sounds like Irish and monk, is most typically portrayed as an early settler who stayed on his ranch for only a short while from 1905 through 1916. Perhaps Monk was even French because alternative spellings of the name were Chavanix, Shavnaux, and Chavanex, Chavanaux. Eventually, 11 years was a fairly long time to remain on the ranch considering he was supposed to have been plagued with sightings of a scary creature known as Native American culture as a skinwalker. It is said that even the nearby Ute Indians were wary of that ranch, not even close to the truth. The real truth is that Monk was neither Irish nor French nor a pioneer. In the language of the day, Monk Chavana was an Indian, not an Irishman or a Frenchman. In fact, his name wasn't even Chavana. It was Monk Nigut Chavana. Monk wasn't just any Ute. He was a chief of the Tabajga band of the Southern Ute Native Americans, sometimes known as Ankapare Utes. I'm going to show a picture of him. Oh, geez. Let me just post a picture of what he's talking about, Monk. If I can find it. There he is. So that's a picture of him, of Monk. Photos exist of Monk in full chieftain headgear. He is sometimes referred to as the chief of other tribes, but like his father and his grandfather before him, he was a Ute chief. Note, it has become a struggle, both in the United States and Canada, to replace the word Indian with a substitute accepted by all people. One choice has been to use the word Aboriginal. This is still an English word, and it's not what the First Nations people call themselves. I don't call myself that. Most people assume that the word Aboriginal means first inhabitants. However, the root meaning of the word ab is a Latin prefix that means away from or not. So Aboriginal not actually mean not original. The issue here is not so much about a word as about reclaiming identity. A spiritual and cultural sense, names like original deprive people of their own identity and force them to adopt a new one. Reclaiming identity is what Monk, his father Charlie Chavano, and his grandfather Chief Chavano were all about. In their day, reclaiming identity was a daily effort in a world where they have been forced off in the very land they had been given by their creator and sent to the reservation land that today borders Skinwalker Ranch. Identity is defined by language and culture. These were being taken away from the Utes along with their land, in most cases with the permission of the United States government. I must ask forgiveness from anyone who takes offense with the word Indian. Not only is the term commonly used in everyday conversation, but also the two most prominent organizations representing the original inhabitants of North America are the National Congress of American Indians and the American Indian Movement. The most recent image of Native Americans that has gained prominence has come from the National Indian Gaming Association. The word native is so broad as to being meaningless if capitalized. It generally refers to an original people, whereas if begun with a lowercase letter, as in native, it can mean someone born in a certain place. For instance, I am native Pennsylvanian, but not Native American. We can't ignore that America was named for the Italian explorer Amerigo Vespucci, and is also not a name that was ever used by the original inhabitants by this land before colonization. The bottom line is that once a name like this finds its way into common usage, it is almost impossible to shake. In similar fashion, when making copies of a piece of paper, we often refer to the process as making a Xerox, or yet Xerox is only one of many manufacturers' copying machines. Indigenous is sometimes used to replace Indian because some see it as providing a connection with land, but is, after all, another word that stems from foreign language. My purpose for this diversion from my story is simply to ask forgiveness from those who would find fault with my use of the word Indian, especially since it is embedded in so much of the documentation of the Native American being spoken of in this history. Picking a name everyone accepts is like child's play to the challenges being faced by the band of Utes, led in part by Chief Chavano, the grandfather of Monk. The elder Chavano was the third-in-line chief, as well as the war chief and medicine man for the Uncompahgre branch of the Utes that ranged from Colorado to Utah, the very land provided to them by their creator. This land was, however, taken away from them by the United States government to instead provide for miners and settlers moving into Colorado. The pretense for removing the Uncompahgre Utes was that they were involved in which has become known as the Meeker Massacre, in which Utes attacked an Indian agency on September 29, 1879, killing the Indian agent Nathan Meeker and his 10 male employees and taking women and children as hostages, causing U.S. Army forces to be called in from Fort Steele in Wyoming. More trouble followed from this warrior band, led by a man who might play a major role in our story. He personally killed Meeker, setting off trouble across the region. His name was Chief Walker, and he favored wearing animal skins, especially yellow buckskin. All of this hostile action was carried out by Walker's warrior band of Utes, and the only involvement of the Uncompahgre is that they interceded to have the kidnapped people returned and to get the band of warrior Utes to agree to stop fighting. There are newspaper clippings in my possession that talk about what took place, how Chief Chavano and Ore, king of the Utes, went to the powwow with Walker's warband and risked their own lives to talk some sense into them, finally resolving the issue as peacefully as possible. There are enough of these articles and accounts to believe that this story is true. For their efforts, the Uncompahgre Utes were forced into Utah from their homeland to Colorado to live on the reservation there. Chief Chavano strongly objected. However, Ore stated, "I do not want to be a chief. I grow old and I am tottering. I have my farm, which I would rather cultivate, and watch the seed planted by me grow up to maturity than to be head chief. They all come to me with their troubles. I know everything and have all their burdens to bear. Washington wants me to give up my position, wants me to stay and govern Utes. I want only to be known as Ore, the friend of the white man." Ouray had met President Lincoln, Grant, and Hayes, and was called a man of peace because he sought to make treaties with settlers and the government. King Ouray and Chief Chauvenot were invited to Washington, D.C., and even visited the White House. They also were taken to see the sights of New York City. Following the Meeker Massacre of 1879, Ouray traveled again in 1880 to Washington, D.C. He tried to secure a treaty for the Uncompahgre Utes, who wanted to stay in Colorado, but the following year the United States forced the Utes and the White River Utes, the Uncompahgre, to the west to reservations in present-day Utah. And so the fate of the Uncompahgre Utes was sealed as they were moved to the reservation that today is known as the Unitah and Ouray Indian Reservation, the same reservation that nearly surrounds Skinwalker Ranch. Now every day was a reminder of how the Ute identity was being destroyed. Braves were so contained compared to their once free roaming style that when longhorn cattle were turned out as part of their rations, the braves would run them through the hills where they would shoot at them in reminiscence of the days of hunting the buffalo. Since they had no resource against the white military power, and with their land treaties being adjusted, willy-nilly the Utes began taking out their frustration on each other, and some turned to alcohol. In addition, more and more settlers were entering the Great Basin, putting further demands on native land. In one incident, 4 Utes, who may have been inebriated, enter a camp of freight haulers asking for food. When they were denied, they began to complain loudly, bringing fear upon the white freighters. Just as the visitors were turning to leave, a young white lad aimed his rifle at one of them and pulled the trigger. The stranger fell to the ground, shot in the neck. The dead man was Joseph Chauvenot, son of Chief Chauvenot. The shooter was A.D. Jackson. The freighters quickly packed up their gear and moved on to a nearby troop encampment. Ouray argued to let the law handle the situation. The young boy was arrested and was being taken to a military station when a band of 60 Utes attacked the entourage, taking the boy away. Some reports say he was hung. Some say the young man was tortured to death. Regardless, this caused more bad blood and frustrated Ouray's peacekeeping efforts. Chauvenot was not as patient, but to honor his chief, he went along with the program. Chief Chauvenot was the brother of Ouray's wife, and when Ouray died, Chauvenot claimed that the land belonged to him and his sister, but other Utes attracted by the promise of money and rations signed by the treaty to move. Ouray died on August 24th, 1880, near the Los Pinos Indian Agency in Colorado. Tribal medicine men, likely including Chief Chauvenot, tried to save his life. In the end, they secretly buried him, where his body could not be found. Chief Chauvenot hoped to be named overall chief of the Uncompahgre Utes. Reservation officials stepped in to prevent this because of his known animosity towards the white man. Some reports say he had also taken to heavy drinking, gambling, and frequently outbursts of anger. Chauvenot went on to serve as the tribe's medicine man, still a position of great importance, but one which ultimately led to his demise. Let me show you another picture here, if I can find it. There's another photo. This is a photo courtesy of Denver Public Library Special Collections. This photo shows Ouray. Let me turn the other one off if I can. So this photo, courtesy of Denver Public Library Special Collections, this photo shows Ouray, king or number one chief of the Uncapra Utes, seated in the center. What the heck? Turn this back on. There we go. Seated in the center with the number 3 chief, Shavana, standing with his hand rested on Ouray's left shoulder. These men were brother-in-law, yet had conflicting opinions of how to deal with white men. Shavana, now being the main tribal medicine man, faced additional pressure in keeping the entire tribe healthy. It was the case that if a shaman failed to keep a person alive, he could be accused, almost as if, of malpractice, and especially of being a witch. While living on the reservation near the current Skinwalker Ranch, the son of a man whose name is given both as Pano and Arowitz, perhaps his full name was Pano Arowitz, died while under Shavano's care. In fact, Arowitz had lost 3 sons in recent weeks and blamed Shavano. He accused the chief of being a witch and of hoodooing his sons. April 4th, 1886 edition of the New York Herald ran a headline reading, "Indian Superstition." The article joined with others in telling how Arowitz shot Shavano twice in the back, claiming Shavano had bewitched his children. Arowitz ran away from the scene, but was soon caught by 5 Ute chiefs, including Charlie Shavano, son of the chief Shavano, who shot Arowitz dead. Chief Shavano suffered from 3 days with his gunshot wounds, but even with the help of other tribal medicine men, through chanting and the application of various native medicines, Shavano could not be saved. Years later, a 14,231-foot mountain, which overlooks the town of Salida, Colorado, was named Mount Shavano. A short distance south from this mountain stands Mount Ouray. These Ute chiefs are remembered in the story and in the very land they struggled to live within, despite conflicting ideas of how that could happen. In the end, both of their ideas lost to Western expansion. With Chief Shavano now gone, his son, Charlie Shavano, took over as the chief of the Uncompahgre Utes. Charlie's life didn't fare much better. In the report of agent from Unitah and Ouray Agency, White Rocks, Utah, August 21st, 1899, federal Indian agents wrote, "I think the Uncapra Indians have been treated very badly. They have always been good Indians. Their chief, Charlie Chavanex, is exceptionally so. This advice is always good. They feel very badly that Washington will neither pay them for their Colorado land nor permit to hire a lawyer to present their case into Congress. Their reservation in Utah was taken from them 17 months ago and thrown open for the settlement. In doing this, the Indians were injured, and the whites were not benefited. For I do not believe a single entry has been made on any land embraced in the former Uncapra reservation. The land is fit only for Indians, and they should have been permitted to keep it." In response to all this unfair treatment by the U.S. government, the Uncapra Utes joined with many other tribes in reviving and intensifying the ghost dances, which sometimes would last days and would terrify local whites. These dances helped the Utes reclaim some of their identity, but ultimately made living alongside whites even more difficult. The ghost dances, which included strange outfits, much like skinwalkers are said to wear, were too similar to the war dances that had led to so many battles in the past between Utes and whites. Charlie Shavano passed away, some say also from a bullet to the back. Although there is some question about this, regardless, Monk Chavano has seen his grandfather shot in the back, had seen his uncle Johnson Chavano shot in the neck, and perhaps had seen his own father shot in the back. He also saw his native lands taken away, with his native identity disappearing before his eyes. When land became available for purchase by settlers, Monk Chavano legally purchased what later became part of Skinwalker Ranch. Let me pop that picture back up. He almost certainly lived there in a teepee or wigwam, as he had lived all his life. He always wore Indian garb and often wore his headdress. His original deed included 328 acres and was signed twice by Theodore Roosevelt. I matched these signatures with other known Roosevelt signatures, and there are enough similarities to believe they are genuine. In 1916, this deed was amended to include only 208 acres, and the paperwork was signed by someone in the name of Woodrow Wilson, as the signature on this deed is dramatically different than Wilson's. Also, allowances were to be made for arbitrary rights of way and canals. It was in 1916 that Monk Chavano left the ranch, which I propose was in direct opposition to and rejection of the government's amendment of his original deed. I believe that perhaps the superstitions and surrounding his family members, all untimely and odd deaths, led to an era of increased superstition around his ranch. He may have even put a curse on the land when he left due to his treatment by the government by using the witch doctor skills his grandfather taught him. Now, let me see. So this is a photo here, a photo showing Monk Chavano at left and his extended family while living on Skinwalker Ranch. It could be various phenomena that happen all over the world are given special attention on Skinwalker Ranch, because they are being scientifically measured within the bounds of a ranch begotten superstition, murder, and hatred caused by maltreatment, and possibly because of a bitter curse by an Indian who, like his grandfather before him, never gave up his identity. It is possible that strange occurrences caused by a real or perceived curse placed on the ranch by Monk Chavano created a situation where all types of strange occurrences began being very closely studied within the 512-acre mystery zone. Eventually, these observations uncovered many strange phenomena that may well take place in other parts of the world, but are not studied in such detail, and with so much financing and science behind the effort as takes place on Skinwalker Ranch. And that's the end of Chapter 2 of the book, Skinwalker. Thank you to everybody who joined me. If you guys like this content, just let me know, and maybe I'll read another chapter to you guys. Who knows, maybe I can try to bring the author on and maybe have him on YouTube channel. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Oh, it's still streaming. How did you guys like the book? Oh, that's awesome, Linda. Let me see if I can stop this again. I'm having issues with Be Live, not sure why. Request failed? What the heck? Thank you, Linda. Thank you, everybody who listens. If anybody be interested in maybe chapter 3, just let me know. I probably will. I probably will stop streaming. Yeah, indeed, Linda. He's a really good author. I like reading it. For some reason, I can't stop the stream.